Good morning. This is the first innovation conversation of 2021. I'm Kevin Coop.
And I'm Tom Furphy.
So, Tom, I don't know. What do you think? Is 2021 a transitional year? I mean, there was so much change driven by the pandemic during 2020. Retailers innovated a lot. They did a lot of new things, hung them by the skin of their teeth, had amazing years financially for most of them. So what kind of year is 2021 likely to be?
Boy, I think we'd like to say that given how tumultuous 2020 was, that maybe things would settle down a little bit for 2021. I don't know, 2 weeks into 2021, I don't think we're necessarily seeing that yet. And you just have to think that the surges and the change in behavior that we saw in 2020 are going to continue in 21. I mean, if you look at just the general state of, shopper safety and the pandemic and concerns over health, a lot of the behaviors are going to need to persist at least through the first half of the year. So some of those changes in behavior we saw last year, I think, in the changes in business processes to support that, we're going to be seeing. So, whether that's as much acceleration as we saw last year, maybe it's more because customers get used to shopping in new ways, retailers get better at serving them. So maybe a little bit of stabilization, but I still think we're in the middle of some pretty significant changes.
Just to show that we're doing this live on tape, I'm going to close my window. It's middle of January and somebody's out there mowing their lawn, and I can't.
That's awesome.
It was the one thing I never expected.
It's better than a snowblower, though.
Well, that's true. There's none of that. But it seems to me that one of the things that retailers have to do, I mean, the word essential has obviously been thrown around a lot during 2020, is having demonstrated to consumers how essential they are. And by coming up with new ways to be essential to them, depending on the market and the customer and the format and all that sort of thing, they have to keep moving in that direction, right? They have to keep, thinking about the notion of being essential every day, of owning the customer experience, differentiating themselves through product and services and technology, doing all those things and not sort of backing off, not letting their foot off the pedal.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw this surge in volume in the grocery business, right? Because we weren't traveling to work, we were staying home. We had these essential needs at home that we needed to fulfill, often locally, and our local grocer stepped up to serve that. We saw a shift in food consumption from away from home, being in the workplace or during travel, and or restaurants, now into food at home, which tends to be, getting that food or that solution for food from your local grocery store. So I think that we've had that initial shift. I think to pull back now in risk, it was such a opportunity for retailers to take this new volume on and serve it in this new ways. And for the most part, retailers really stepped up with answering the call. To say I can take a breather and I can pull back and I can maybe be less sharp at how I'm doing this, to maybe save a couple of bucks. I don't think that now's the time to do that. I think you have the customer, shopping from you either physically or digitally or some combination thereof. They're buying more products from you. They're solving meal needs. They're solving essential needs at home. It's not the time to pull back on that. At a minimum, maintain your level of focus on that. Read what your customers are doing, gather data, refine that offering, and continue to step it up. And I think we're going to see lots of retailers that do that. I think we'll see some retailers that see this as an opportunity to take their foot off the gas a little bit. And I think that'd be a big mistake.
Do you think that, to what degree do you think the economics of the situation will play into it? I mean, you and I have talked before. They've all had, most of them have had the best year of their lives economically, which means they're going to have to start dealing with things like comps. Do you think that'll force them to, or will they think that forces them to sort of to stop investing so they can continue to show higher profits?
So I hope not. I think there will be some retailers that say we need to pull back on investment because we just need to make the near-term economics work if we're answering to an investor, right? Be that a fund, be it the street, be it, and really any type of shareholder or stakeholder. Um, I think it's it's going to be important to they got their benefit. They had this big increase in sales. Most all of them saw this big increase and shift in their e-commerce business. Uh, it's not news that e-commerce is less profitable than stores, right? So I think you're going to see um, there's this realization that, okay, e-commerce used to be 3-4% of my sales. It's now 8, 9, 10, 11. Some grocers are even more than that. Like, I need to invest in making this more profitable, right? So I think you'll see a refinement of investment versus just triage that, hey, we got to offer this, we got to offer curbside, we got to offer all the basic blocking and tackling, to now let's work on how we can make it more profitable.
But and the thing is it's not just. I mean, they're not doing it in a vacuum. They still have to compete against Walmart. I mean, who is
Mm-hmm.
making major investments in e-commerce. Clearly, they have to invest in compete against Amazon. I mean, and it was just this week that dunnhumby came up with that customer preference survey saying that Amazon's number one, ahead of HEB, ahead of Trader Joe's, ahead of Wegmans. You know, which was I think a big deal. I mean, that has to be a wake up call to people in the industry. Um,
Absolutely.
and by the way, they're going to have to compete against the restaurant industry that is going to come back. It's going to take some time. It's not going to be the same as it was for a while. But I also think that there are going to be people in the restaurant business who are going to see this as a call to innovate in their business that could make them more competitive in some ways against traditional food retailers. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I mean, I think you see in the restaurant industry that you'll have to determine there, like, what is your differentiation, right? Are you white tablecloth? It's all about the in-restaurant experience and the live presentation of food and sensory experience around food, or can it be handled by some support from delivery and bringing that experience home? I mean, you talked about the experiences of restaurants and hotels working together. Are we going to see some innovation around that? I think that it's going to change the nature of differentiation in the restaurant business. And then from them, it's going to be, all right, well, then I'll probably in some cases have to find the right partners, right? Is it just simply a Grubhub or a DoorDash to just move products, from here to there, or is it some other innovative way, to engage this customer in these new times?
yeah. I know you feel the same way I do about this. Is the what if there's one thing I want back from the restaurant industry, it's Edis. I want it
Totally.
back, and I want Morgan back. It's
Oh
like
yeah,
I
no
just
doubt.
that's what I want from the restaurant industry this year. Um, Now you talk about third party. It's interesting because I do think that on the one hand we're starting to see the Wall Street Journal had the piece. We wrote about it on Morning Newsbeat. Some erosion in the good feelings towards Instacart, with some recognition on the part of retailers doing business with it. That wait a minute, we're losing more, maybe more than we're gaining in this relationship. Instacart obviously is thinking about doing an IPO soon. They just hired a new CFO who that's what he does.
Right.
Um, uh, and and at the same time, though, while I think retailers have to be concerned about outsourcing certain parts of the customer experience to third party companies that may have ulterior motives for wanting that information,
Mm-hmm.
they do have to continue to find the right way to partner with companies that are going to add to their value proposition as opposed to potentially subtract.
Absolutely. I mean, we've talked for the last few years, since Instacart's been coming onto the scene, accelerated, I guess, two big acceleration events for them, right? The Amazon acquisition of Whole Foods, and that was the uh-oh moment for the industry when everybody says, I got to get some level of religion in e-commerce. And then, during the pandemic when it even further surged, um, Instacart is there as an entity to solve a real need expressed by many shoppers. And they have gotten tons of brand credit for being that solution. Um, and again, when it's a few points on sales, retailers can kind of coexist with that. when it becomes a bigger portion of your sales, that's tougher to coexist, right? We've said, time and time again that retailers need to own that brand relationship. I do think, and we're seeing this in the market now, that there's an absolute realization across retail that we need to own this customer relationship. Like we can't offload the brand value, strictly to a partner. But I think you'll see um, Instacart's value proposition to the industry evolve a little bit away from being the core consumer brand interface and serving some of the value proposition, right? I think, Instacart workers and their quality experience around pick, pack, and delivery, which they've gotten pretty good at. Not necessarily they're going to be better than every retailer could possibly be at it, but it's what they do and they're pretty good at it. If you can partner with them to do that, and customers are willing to pay a little bit more for that type of service, and you're able to keep your brand relationship with the customer, that could be good. That could be a real win. If you're going to, continue to let them, take the brand value, and be the hero for your customers, that's probably not going to be great for you long term. But I do think we're seeing the industry pull back on that and want to take that, I'll do the website, I'll be the value prop to the brand, and Instacart can pick, pack, and deliver for me. And I think that's okay. I don't know what that means for Instacart as far as their ultimate enterprise value, right? They get a lot of credit now.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
their IPO ain't going off at the price they want it to go at if all they're doing is pick
No, exactly. Well, that's why their IPO price is going to go off soon, before that shift happens. And who knows? Maybe they do. Maybe down the road they do open their own fulfillment centers and they do become that brand. Right? How big of an entity can they be if they're only doing the servicing parts of e-commerce? Not sure. But that's all stuff that's gonna sort out. But I know retailers, though, in general, and you saw it in the article, but we see it daily when we talk to retailers too. They're recognizing that they need to own that.
How about one of the things, and I talked about this on Morning Newsbeat at the end of December, was, the more I thought about it, the more I was frustrated by the idea that I don't think that retailers were using their data, the customer information, their data, their so-called loyalty information, to the degree that they should have, especially because the pandemic just opened this enormous window where they could have said, this is our moment to prove our loyalty to our shoppers. And best I can tell, nobody took advantage of the moment. Do you see any recognition out there that part of competing with Amazon, competing with Walmart, competing with restaurants and C-stores and everybody who's out there ultimately means knowing, having this data, using the data, acting on it, demonstrating your loyalty to your and especially to your best shoppers?
Yeah.
I mean, do you see any movement in that direction? I mean, I've been writing about loyalty marketing for 30 years, and I don't think most people have gotten any better at it.
So yeah, we've been talking about that for years, right? If loyalty is only to grant a discount, then that's not really loyalty. I think we're seeing a big time shift right now. We are seeing across the industry retailers that are bringing in business leaders from the airline industry, from the hotel industry, right, which have tended to be better at affinity and customer loyalty programs than grocery. You're seeing much more hiring of PhDs and folks in data science into these retailers. So yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of that happening now. I think retailers are recognizing the value of all the data that they have, and that is an asset that, especially with the proliferation of digital capabilities around list building, digital helping you even in your store-based shops, over into e-commerce, the importance of that. I think you're going to see a renaissance in loyalty. I think you're going to start to see a bunch of it rear its head in 21. And I think in 22 and beyond, you're going to see a ton more of it. And that's really going to separate retailers that win and those that don't. Because customers are used to personalization, right? Everything you do in life is personalization. We talked about social dilemma. Sometimes it goes way too far, but done right, it can be magical. And I think some retailers are going to realize that and are going to really reap the benefit of that.
Well, and not to end this on a commercial, but this is part of what you guys are doing at Replenium.
Oh, absolutely.
Full disclosure, Replenium is an advertiser on Morning Newsbeat, but we were doing the innovation conversation long before Replenium existed, so that's fine. But Replenium, which is automatic replenishment at the consumer level, and the way that Amazon does it with Subscribe and Save, that whole thing is based on knowing what customers are buying. By their very definition, they're probably going to be among your best customers, and then being able to use that data to both fulfill those regular orders, but also build on that to develop a relationship out of that. Because if it's only just refilling orders, that's one thing, and that's fine. Right. But it's the development of the relationship. It seems to me that's the power. That's the money shot, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you apply data science to, any household's, purchase data, and you can pretty much determine what they're going to need when they're going to need it, right? So you take that power of data science, machine learning, and you combine it with, customer tools and capabilities around providing shoppers visibility into, what upcoming replenishments can be and managing those in their cart. It totally changes the game. And yeah, so I think that you're going to see a lot more auto replenishment this year and next, which we're thankful for at Replenium. But you're definitely seeing, we were in a meeting with a retailer recently, and they had mentioned that they have 3 data science PhDs on their staff. 3. Wow, that's more than we have at Replenium. We don't have 3. It's pretty impressive. So I mean, I think retailers are getting it, and I think you're going to see. And so they see something like auto replenishment, like, well, this is a great way to use our data in a way that truly helps our customers.
So I was going to ask you if this is a year, if it's that in which the distance will grow between the haves and the have-nots. But at the risk of sounding like Yoda, is it people who do or those who do not? Is it?
I think the dues are gonna be the ones that make the bigger move, and the do nots will, many of the do nots are already on their, and I don't want to quite say their death spiral, but they've already, a lot of them already set the course to their ultimate demise. It might take 5 years, it might take 10 years, but unless they change their focus truly to the customer, right, truly to leveraging data and capabilities that today's shoppers want to serve them, they're never going to make it long term. So they might die a long, slow death, but I think the haves are really going to see, some really nice growth for leveraging these capabilities.
Well, we'll talk about the haves, we'll talk about the have-nots, but we're certainly going to have a lot to talk about in 2021. Thanks as always for doing this every other week. I always feel like I come out smarter, and I know our readers do too. So
I appreciate it.
This is the Innovation Conversation, the first of 2021, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. I'm Kevin Coop.
I'm Tom Furphy. Thanks, everyone. Happy New Year.